Hi guys, Coach Abby back at it again with another trainer tip on Thursday, and today we are talking about flexibility training. So the first thing we want to talk about briefly with flexibility is that it's the ability to move a joint through full range of motion. It's not just stretching, and it helps us with our neuromuscular efficiency. And this is what helps us connect our central nervous system, or our brain and our spine, to our muscular system in order to move and to do things fluidly at boot camp. So it's important to note that when we don't have good flexibility, we have muscular imbalances within our body. This creates things like poor posture, which even when you're not sitting at a desk, turns into improper movements, which then leads to injuries in your everyday life and injuries here at boot camp as well. So there's 3 areas of flexibility that we're going to be talking about: corrective, active, and functional. Each of those has their own specific types of training, but these are the 3 categories of flexibility that we look at. So the first one we're going to talk about is corrective flexibility. This is meant to increase our joint range of motion, improve muscular imbalances, and correct our altered joint motion. So anything that's an incorrect movement pattern, maybe because of the first 2. Types of corrective flexibility include myofascial release and static stretching. Next up, we have active flexibility. This is when we can take muscles through full range of motion with some sort of movement. This also increases our neuromuscular efficiency because we're connecting our brain and our body through movement. Types of this kind of flexibility can be myofascial release and active isolated stretching. You'll notice that myofascial release is listed under corrective, active, and dynamic flexibility because this can be done in all aspects of flexibility before you do any other type of training. So next we have our functional flexibility. This is going to be an integrated multi-planner exercise, and we're working on flexibility through a specific movement sequence. Types of this training can be SMR and dynamic flexibility training. So talking a little more specifically, myofascial release is also known to us as foam rolling. This is able to correct imbalances within the muscle structure. It can reduce trigger points, or what we typically call knots, and it can inhibit muscles that are improperly firing. When doing myofascial release, you want to sustain pressure and make sure that you're breathing nice and deep as well as slow so that you can activate that parasympathetic nervous system and you're constantly in the rest and digest. That way your body's not perceiving this foam rolling as extra stress. Myofascial release can be done before or after a workout. All right, so here are 2 tools that we can use for some myofascial release. We have a foam roller. You can get a normal foam roller online, Amazon, Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart. This one has some bumps and some ridges to make things a little bit tougher. Another tool you can use is this hand foam roller, which is something that I'll show you here in a second, where you can manually move it across the muscle. A little less weight, so if you've got a really sore area, this might be a good alternative. Otherwise, I would recommend using a foam roller. The first thing we'll show you here is the foam rolling for the calf. So anytime you're foam rolling, you want to stay off of the joint itself. So I'm not going to roll onto my ankle, and I'm not going to be rolling behind my knee. I'm going to slowly move up and down my calf muscle here. It's really important that while you are doing the foam rolling, that you're nice and slow on the muscle. If you find a specific spot, you can stay there and hold pressure for about 30 seconds. You can also rotate back and forth over that spot as well. A really important part of this is your breathing. You want to make sure that you are staying in a parasympathetic state so that your body is not perceiving this as an alarm or stress, and instead you are still in the rest and digest stage where that muscle can then relax
as you go into your workout. So after rotating and holding on that tight spot, I'm going to continue moving up and down my muscle. And you just want to move a couple times through, up and down on each leg, and a couple times through, up and down on any of those muscles that you might be working in your workout. Another example, using this foam rolling stick, I can do my quad or my TFL here. Just nice and slow. Again, I'm not rolling over my knee, I'm not rolling over my joint. I'm gonna start a couple centimeters above and work nice and slow here. If I find a spot, I can rotate my hands back left to right and then continue. Making sure I go nice and slow, taking a couple of deep breaths as I move up and down that muscle group. That is for your myofascial release.
All right, so next up we've got our static stretching. This, again, is correcting imbalances within our muscles. It helps lengthen our tight muscles, and it's usually done in a passive or a low force, longer time system. This is probably what we view most when we think of stretching. It's getting into a position and stretching till tension, stretching till you feel a little bit of pull in that muscle, and holding it then for 30 seconds. This too can be done before and after a workout. All right, so next up, an example of our static stretching is going to be our standing calf stretch right here. I'm gonna press my heel into the floor, my toe is off the ground against this wall, and I'm just going to press lightly towards that wall, getting into the back side of my calf muscle here. When doing this, I'm gonna hold for about 30 seconds. And I can switch sides. Same thing, lift the toe, press the heel down. You want to try and relax, stay into that parasympathetic state by breathing. Trying to keep your body in a relaxed state, not a stressed state. 30 seconds on that side. That is a calf static stretch. So next, for static stretching, we can do our adductor, so that inside of our thigh here. I'm going to have a wide stance, and I'm going to slightly lean back here, getting into the adductor on my left leg. I can simply press my elbow into my thigh here. Feeling it on the inside of my thigh. Notice that I'm not moving. That's where the static comes from. I'm staying here and getting a nice stretch in that specific muscle. I can switch sides, 30 seconds on each side here, getting into that inner thigh. And that is another example of static stretching. Active stretching increases the muscle extensibility. It uses what we call reciprocal inhibition. So basically, if you're looking at two muscle groups, let's just say the quads on the front side of the leg and the hamstrings on the back side of the leg. So you're going to be working, and while the quads are flexing, the hamstring is able to relax and then stretch, and vice versa. You can also add a little bit of excess stress on this type of stretching with the flexion or the flexing of a specific muscle. This is usually done 5 to 10 reps for 1 to 2 seconds. And again, this is active. You are moving versus the passive or static. Next, we've got an example of an active stretch here. I'm going to do the 90-90 hamstring stretch. So I'm lying flat on the ground. I'm going to place my hands behind my knee here, and I'm going to extend and bend. Okay? Extend, feeling it into my hamstring, and then flex or bend. This is active stretching because I am actively putting that muscle through its range of motion as well as moving. So flex
and extend. Come to the other side. Flex. You can see as I start, I do have a hard time getting my leg to 180 or straight. As I get into it, every time I extend, I find a little more space. This is the active 90-90 hamstring stretch.
Next up, we've got our dynamic stretching. This specific stretch increases flexibility while optimizing our neuromuscular control, which again we know is the connection of our brain and our body when moving. It uses the body's force to move through a full range of motion. An example exercise of dynamic stretching would be about 10 reps, and you could do 3 to 10 exercises for a warm-up.
Next up for a dynamic stretch, I'm going to go ahead and do some prisoner squats. So my hands are going to be up and behind my head here, and I'm going to go put my body through a full range of motion in the squat movement. So unlocking my hips, standing back up, full extension, going down, back up. Just want to work on getting to that parallel position. Dynamic stretching is oftentimes seen before some sort of athletic performance, say a soccer game, a swim meet, competition of some sort. Dynamic stretching is going to be limited to after all of our other stretching, and also for somebody that has good functional movement and good neuromuscular control. Another exercise that would be considered dynamic stretching could be some banded walks. So side to side, you're working those muscles, lengthening and shortening those muscles, putting it through a similar range of motion that it might be going through during your exercise or your activity.
All right, guys, that's all we've got for Trainer Tip Thursday today. We will see you next time.